Get off your ash. That's right, you heard me. Confronting what happened to us in the past in order to understand who we are in the present so we can be who we want to be in the future. It's time to stop allowing what happened to you yesterday to continue affecting what you do and who you are today. This podcast is going to challenge you and push you outside of your comfort zone. So, if you're ready to get off your ash, let's go. All right. Hey, everybody. And thanks so much for coming back and joining me for another edition of the Get Off Your Ash podcast. My name is Joe Amaral. And this podcast, it's all about helping you dealing with the crap from your past, all that stuff that happened to you so long ago, and it's still holding you back today. It makes me sad when I hear about people who are just kind of, stuck where they are, and they won't risk, and they won't step out and do that thing that's uncomfortable, and knowing that it'll make them happy, but they're too afraid to launch forward. So, they stay where they are in the comfortable, and they're sad, and they're just kind of existing from day to day. And we want to help you, to thrive. And it's awful when you think, maybe it was something that was said about you, about your looks, about your personality, about your, whatever it is. It was years ago, and sometimes even, decades ago, and it's still holding you back today. Oh, that's so awful to hear when that happens. And so I'm hoping that we can say something on this podcast that's going to help you, break free of that, that voice of criticism. It lives, rent free in your head. And it always says the same thing. It says, you can't do it. You can't start a podcast. You can't start a YouTube channel or a blog or a business or a ministry or whatever it is. The voice says you can't. And so guess what? You don't. And the truth is they said those same things about me a long time ago. And those things, they stuck in my head. They would say things like, Joe, you have an awful voice, man, for radio or for podcast. And there's way more people out there who are more qualified to talk about this stuff. And there's already thousands of other podcasts out there, who are doing this thing. But you know what, though? I'm the only Joe Amaral that I know who went through what I went through. No one else can speak to my experience. I alone know what I went through. And so even though there's so many other podcasts and authors and writers and speakers out there, I'm the one who knows my story the best. I am the most qualified to tell my story. And the truth is, it doesn't matter, what anybody else says about me. It doesn't matter what they think about me. What matters is, whose voice am I listening to in my head? Am I listening to my voice, to God's voice? Am I listening to the voice of that terrible person and all the horrible and terrible, things they said about me? Well, if that's the voice that we're always listening to, then we're never going to be able to move forward. And in the book, in Get Off Your Ash, there's the last chapter 8. It's called Kick Your Ash. And it's all about kicking your ash to the curb. Those voices, those experiences, those people who are continually putting ash on you. And they're passive aggressive, they're hurtful, they're condescending. They take these, cheap digs at you, and they say, oh, I didn't mean it, I was only kidding. But they're continually putting that on you. You have the right to kick that out of your life, to protect yourself, to say no to that, to distance yourself from that. And so don't allow all those negative voices and experiences, from your past to dictate who you are today and what you get to do. You decide, not them. And that's really what I want to say today. And I'm so glad that you've decided to either listen to or watch this podcast. And maybe this is your first time, you just kind of Googling around looking for encouragement, or maybe you've been, following me from the beginning. I'm really hoping that you're going to receive the encouragement that you're looking for today. We're going to build you up, but we're not going to tear you down. I'm here to help build you up. There's enough voices out there that are glad to tear you down, but we're going to do everything we can to lift your spirits, to speak that positive, word and energy into your life, to help release you into what you want to do. And so my guest today is going to share her story of how she had to get off of her own ash. She was in the place of comfort. She was in the place of security, and she had to get off of that and risk going forward. And I think you're really going to be encouraged when you hear her story. She's an amazing, amazing young woman. I love her like a daughter. You know, we pastored together, we worked together. She has a great story. And here she is, Geninne Tatum. Well, here she is. Told you. She was awesome. This is Geninne Tatum.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Now, Geninne, is there any a connection or relation to Channing Tatum at all? Is it Channing Tatum?
Channing Tatum. You know what? It's so funny that people have actually asked me that. They've
Like for real asked you?
for real asked me that. Because back in the day when people started on Facebook, it was like, oh, your crushes and celebrities and who I look like and all that kind of stuff. And so I've been asked if that has any bearing on Channing Tatum. I'm like, no, that's my middle name, and I love my middle name, and I was born that before Channing Tatum was known, and so
That's funny.
no, it has nothing to do with
I know.
him.
I know.
As
I just
handsome
thought
as
it'd
he
be,
is, and all that kind of stuff,
yeah,
it has.
God bless him. No problem. I was telling people in the intro that you and I, we didn't just work together, we actually pastored together.
Yes, we did. You
Uh,
were one of the people who uh, on on our staff who gave me an opportunity to like co-speak with you early on at our church staff, and so it was just an
yeah.
honor and a privilege to work with you.
Well, I remember two things about being there. I remember when they introduced me, everybody was kind of sitting in that little lunch break room and they said, "Hey, here's Joe, the teaching pastor." And I remember, and quote me if I'm wrong, I think you said something like, Joe Amaral is the best looking teaching pastor this church has ever had. I don't want to misrepresent what you said.
As a single lady, I probably would not have said that.
Well, it helps that I was at that time the first and only teaching pastor the church ever had. So there was a low bar.
Yeah. And hey, everyone is good looking in their own way. It's awesome.
You should be a politician. That was a good answer. Uh, yeah, I remember when I was on staff, and you're putting together all the teaching, and I was like, why should it be the same guy always up there the whole time for 45 minutes? And, I kind of introduced the whole idea of tag team preaching. And
Yes.
I started doing that with the senior pastor at the time. And then I think, I don't remember if it was Daniel Clark first or
Yep.
you. So Daniel was a youth pastor at the time. And I said, he's not just a youth pastor. This is a great young man. He's got a lot to offer. He's wise. And I said same thing about Geninne. She's not just doing was it children's ministry
I
or
was
young
junior high,
adults,
part-time
junior
junior
high.
high. Yeah.
I said she's so much more than that. I knew that you had a lot to give, and I don't know if you'll remember this. I do because it was so embarrassing. Um, do you remember? You don't
It
know?
depends on what you say.
Okay, okay. Well, at that time, we used to have 3 morning services, right, to accommodate the people who attended the church. And so we did the first service, and it went well. That was the 8:41, right? So we kind
Yeah.
of were still waking up and coming to, and the second one you kind of nail, you hit your stride. And then it was the third service, and we were coming to the end of the message, and I think I had the final point to close. And all of a sudden, my throat just totally dried up and I started hacking and coughing. And I had to turn my mic off. And I looked at you. I said, close the service. You
I
remember
do.
that?
I do. And it was just like, okay, you just got to step in and make it happen, right?
And you
And
did.
we did. We did. And I think it was one of the things that you really appreciate about tag team preaching. Instead of like waiting for the hack attack to end for the one person, it's like somebody can actually sort of remove themselves from the environment, and the service keeps going on. And
I
I do
know.
remember that. And I go, and it's not like I hadn't spoken in front of large groups of people. It wasn't even that I was
No.
unfamiliar with public speaking. I've done it before. My first pastorate, I was at the district. It's just when you sort of get into this rhythm of speaking to junior highs all the time, you
Sure.
kind of sort of just get into this feel and this rhythm. And so I remember the reverse was true when you came into junior high and you did your
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
You were talking to them about our Hebraic roots and getting them to understand the magnitude of all of that.
that's
And so
right. I forgot about
you
that.
just see
Yeah,
those dynamics where it goes, hey, I'm used to speaking to a large group of adults, and now
right.
I gotta simplify my content to get to the brain of a 12-year-old.
So we definitely, we have history. We work together. We used to have meetings together. We preach together, and I left to do my thing. You left to do your thing. And one of the things that I've done is I've written, this new book, Get Off Your Ash. And I was, thinking about people who have, probably, gone through some challenges. And well, first of all, everybody has.
Yes.
Everybody has a big old pile of ash in their
Right?
past. And so I purposely didn't send you the book before this interview because I just kind of wanted to. I always love hearing how people define ash, pain, hurt, and how they go through it, and see how it ties in with what I've written. So you probably saw one day, oh, what's Joe posting now, right? Get off your what? What's Amaral doing, right? You remember seeing the
Definitely
post about the
like
book?
a far stretch from like um, story in the stars and this metaphoric, beautiful way of interpreting and understanding how God's at work and like get off your ash. I go, he's playing with some metaphor there. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think most people understand, what the ash was from the story of Job. It was all the negative things that happened. He had lost everything. All the animals were burned. They would have burned the bodies of the children, and all of that would have been on that big pile that he was sitting on. And so that pile was filled with, just he was embarrassed. He was angry at God. He was kind of humiliated because, I mean, I think at one point Job says, like, God, like, do you know who I am? Like, I'm Job. Like I was the eyes of the blind, dude. I was the lame, the legs of the lame. Like,
Right.
how could this happen to me? And he, for 40 chapters, he kind of goes on about all this ash. And so I'm just kind of reaching out to my friends and colleagues, people that I've worked with in the past. And instead of saying, hey, tell me about your pain, tell me about like the worst thing that ever happened to you in your life, that's not very encouraging for a podcast, like we don't want to get into that. So what I've done is I've kind of turned it around. And sometimes, and I said this in the intro, we get held back from doing what we want because of something that occurred earlier in life. Somebody said, you're too young, you're a woman, you're this, you're that. They've said things to me, Joe, you have a horrible radio voice, you're an immigrant, you don't never finish high school, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of go like, oh, yeah, that's true. So we listen to this voice. And I think, God, what if I had listened to them and not gotten off that pile of ash and launched out, whether it's into pastoral ministry, into missions, into writing, into podcasting. So here's the question for you, Geninne, who's not related to Channing. Uh, what have you done in your life, right? That's been maybe a little scary, but really fun and challenging and fulfilling. And could you imagine not having done that thing because of something somebody did or said earlier? What's that thing that you've done or accomplished?
Yeah. So for me, it was 2021. It was actually stepping away
Okay.
from pastoral ministry and launching this organization that I'm in the process of building. Uh, called it. It started out being called the Third Way, rooted in this idea that a lot of the conversations around race, equity, diversity, all of that kind of
Mm,
stuff are just either left or right and very politicized.
for sure.
There has to be a third path that is rooted in truth and humility, that is valuing the human being that we're having the conversation with or about.
Amazing.
And that we we have to restore the humanity into the conversation and make it not
Yeah.
us against each other, but rather us against a system that is breaking us
Mm,
apart.
that's good. That's
And so
good.
that's kind of where my heart was like really raised up, and it just got to the point where I could see in terms of being on a church staff that I was never going to really get to that.
Hmm. Hmm. Well,
And
that's not the place for that
yeah,
conversation,
it's not the place
right?
for that
Yeah. Yeah.
conversation. It's just not going to unfold here the way I'm seeing God work. And so I stepped away from my pastoral role. I'd been a pastor for 17 years at that point.
Yeah.
It's
Hang on. I want to talk about that though before you get to the next stage, because you know maybe someone who's not Geninne is listening to this or watching this, going saying, "You walked away from a secure position." something you trained for and you knew how to do it and you were good at it? Like how did you get out of that comfort zone and move forward? That's the crux of this whole of the
Yeah.
show.
So very like even as I was praying through it and all of this kind of stuff, it was actually the story of Abraham that really resonated.
Oh, okay.
And it was the story of God saying, I'm leading you into a place that doesn't exist yet. Will you trust me? Will you step out of what you know is comfortable, what you know to be familiar? Will you step out of that and move to a place where I will show you what I'm going to
Mm,
do, how I'm going to make you a blessing to nations, to people? And it just got to this point where I was like, if I don't do this, will I regret it for the rest of my life?
bam.
Right? If I don't do
Yeah.
this, I don't
Yeah.
put my hope in this future that doesn't quite exist yet. Um, and then the story that there's another story that sort of comes to mind, and it's the story of Esther, right? And
Okay.
Mordecai is talking to Esther, and
Yeah.
he says to her, your family might be destroyed, but God will raise someone up
Mm,
because he is sovereign. And
wow.
so it was that dichotomy of, do I trust the Lord enough to have faith for the thing that doesn't exist yet? And if I don't, he will raise someone up to do it anyway.
Yeah, and I'm gonna miss it.
Right, I'm going to miss it. Do I want to be a part of it, or do I just want to see it happen?
Yikes.
And that tension is the one where you sort of sit in and you go, you kind of do this pros and con list. What are all the things that could hold me back from doing this thing?
Yeah.
And what are all the really cool things that could transpire if it becomes tangible and real? And so because my heart has really been talking about this race thing,
Hmm.
um, there's so many things, so many instances in my past that I had to sort of wrestle with, because I still have a little bit of a not really imposter syndrome, but I have this
Mm.
idea that I shouldn't. So one of the things was, when I was really young, I had an aunt who did not value dark skin,
Oh, okay.
and she would treat me in a very particular way. It still hurts a
Mm.
little. And for a very long time, and I still wrestle with being an upfront person. If like my friends that have known me for 20 years, they're like, Geninne, you're somebody who commands a room. You're somebody who can speak so articulately. You're somebody that when you speak, it's like, wow,
Hmm.
I hear and I understand. I go, but I wrestle every
Yeah.
single time I stand up with um, what my aunt told me. You're too dark to be seen. You're like, you have nothing to contribute. Those kinds of things. And you have to go, do I believe that? Will I still believe that? Will I continually live in that? And I wrestle with that daily. Every time I open my mouth, I go,
Oh, Janine.
I have something to contribute. I'm important. God made me on purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I have to lean into the affirmations of the Holy Spirit that you were designed for such a time as this. This is why you
Amen.
exist right now. What you've gone through, what you've been through, other people need to know that there's a way out. There's a way through. There's a way
100%.
beyond what somebody had said without knowing that they were going to grow in you. Um, this wall of self doubt, this wall of like, I'm sure my aunt had really good intentions. Well, I can't say she did. All I can
Yeah.
say, she had a
Yeah.
way of thinking that
Right.
benefited her, and I was not going to benefit from those same things because of the color of my skin. And
Man,
so, right. And so
sorry, I gotta say, Janine, what you're saying, it's so important because I know that there are a lot of people who are listening or watching this right now. It may not be a skin issue. It could be like a physique issue. It could be a height issue. It could be a, nationality issue.
disabilities,
Yeah.
um, like there are all kinds of things that um, we're not perceived as being perfect, right? So it might be my nose is too big, my ears are too big, my skin is right,
Yeah.
my hair is not curly enough, or my hair is too straight, I'm a little round, or I'm a little skinny. Like all of these labels that nobody fits
All
in,
those voices. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
nobody actually fits into the box, really. somebody's got a wonky toe, somebody's got right, like we actually don't even fit into our own preconceived ideas of what perfection is, and in so doing we go, well, now I'm disqualified. We've created a box that nobody fits in, but now I'm disqualified, right?
Dude, that's crazy what you're saying. That is so good.
And it's
And
so narrow and it's so small.
you said that you still wrestle with it, even though people say, oh, you're really good at what you do and you're great. And people say the same thing about me. Oh, you seem very confident when you get on a platform or in front of a camera. But every time before I do like you do, what happens? My mind goes back to that voice.
Right.
Yeah, but Joe, remember what they said to you? That you were never going to amount to anything. You were just some high school dropout immigrant, and your family's no good, and there's so many more qualified people. And the reason why I'm glad I didn't send you a copy of the book is because you're actually like almost word for word quoting chapter 3, okay, which is get your head out of your ash.
Ah, yes.
That means stop going back. You have to get your head out of it. Once you move forward from it and you make that decision to go, stop going back. Oh yeah, I'm too light skinned. I'm too dark skinned. I'm too skinny. I'm too fat. I'm too tall. and we keep going back to that place. And it's like we're a boat that's tethered to the dock, and we're trying to move forward. And the harder we try, the more we burn ourselves out because we're tethered. We ain't going nowhere.
Right.
So I'm so glad to hear, you saying what you're saying.
And there, so for me what I've discovered is it's not never going back, because if I don't ever go back, I never remember what I came through,
Right.
right? And I have this false sense of, look at what I've accomplished on my own, when in reality, even though it's painful to tell the story of what I experienced with my aunt,
Hmm.
it reminds me that that's not true, right? And
Yeah.
it gives me a place in order to identify with other people. If my ash is the thing that is holding me back, then that's where it becomes a problem. But
Yeah.
so I've come to not really like the saying everything happens for a reason.
Right.
I have a negative feeling towards it, just because it's
Yeah.
so incredibly passive. It is, I have no control over anything. Everything just happens for a reason. Whereas I like to take the idea or the stance that God wastes nothing. Bad
Yeah.
things happen, good things
That's
happen.
better. Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing is
100%.
ever wasted in God's kingdom. He can use our good and our bad to accomplish what he does. And that reminds me the story of Joseph, right? Joseph was really preemptive in
Yep.
terms of, hey, I had a dream that God did this in me and God did that in me. And it stirred in his brothers this hate, this
Yeah.
animosity towards him. If he had just kept his mouth shut and treasured it in his heart and allowed God to do what he was going to do, the truth is he might never have even ended up in Egypt. If it weren't for his brothers,
Exactly. Exactly.
they might not have ever put him in the cistern. He might never have been gotten but to Ishmaelites. He might never have
Yeah.
developed all of the things that were required for him to actually become second in command.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to what you said, that God wastes nothing. Right.
Right.
And then Joseph says, come on, lift up your hearts. Like, don't be sad. What you meant for evil, God meant it for
And
good.
if it's good,
I
right.
never would have saved you had it not been for what you did, as
Right.
crazy as that sounds.
Right. And it doesn't mean that we go around doing bad things to
Oh,
people, go,
Lord,
well,
no.
God can redeem it. No, because it's still about our character and who we become in the midst of
Yeah,
it.
for sure.
But I've seen God use horrible circumstances
Yeah.
and redeem them for something that is good. Um, so for example, we're celebrating the 2-year anniversary of George Floyd.
Yeah.
2 years ago, we watched a man's life be taken from him, and it stirred in us a desire and a motive to act.
Hmm.
I don't think God wasted George Floyd's life for that
Yeah.
reason. I think he used it to inspire us to say, this is unjust. That is not how justice is served.
Hmm.
How do we become a different people now, having witnessed that? Do I think it was right or just? No way, no way. But it was a mechanism to start something
Right.
we're hoping to continue. And as we watch more things transpire, it means that it has to activate in us something that will change things.
Yeah.
Even as we're watching Buffalo, we're watching Texas, we're watching all
Yeah.
of these things transpire. If we don't change, if we don't act, if we don't move, we say that's permissible in our midst.
Hmm.
And
Right.
that's these are the things that are designed to shake us and go, no more on my watch. I'm tired
Hmm.
of the death of innocence. I'm tired of this being our narrative of how we are supposed to live in this world. And and I wish it didn't have to come to the loss of life
Yeah.
before we ever got to the place of going, I want to be different. I want to choose
That's it.
different. I
Yeah.
want to live different. And I just wish more and more people were willing to not allow the negative voice that holds them back from good
Mm.
to act, right? And so even as I think about the organization I'm building, there is a fear that it's not rooted in wanting good for people, right?
Mm.
A lot of people would say, well, everything was fine the way it was when we were everybody we were all perfectly fine the way we were, and we but you couldn't see the
Hmm.
underbelly of how people were being treated, how people's voices were being lost, how people were
Yeah.
being sidelined or maligned in the system that the way it was. And so if we don't get to a place where the things that we are witnessing cause us to act, if we just sort of twiddle our thumbs, I think that's the crux of what our ash is. It's being content with where we are. We need more people who are no
Are you
longer
sure you didn't read the book?
I have not read the book. We need more people who are saying, I don't
Yeah.
want this to be the story of my life, my family, my world anymore.
Yeah.
We want it to be
100%.
rooted in love, in empathy, in good, in value for human dignity, in believing that people are made to be loved, that people are made to be welcomed,
Mm.
people are made to belong. And the things that we do towards that like that we not let our past, our history, our ash um, hold us back from doing good. Because
I just,
ash doesn't prevent people from doing bad, right? When you think about
mm,
people who want to do bad, they are not held back by their past. They just want to
no,
do. They're going to do it no matter what, right? And sometimes it's their past that actually inspires them to do that evil,
sure it is.
that thing, right? So why can't the opposite be true? Why can't the past, the bad thing that happened inspired me
Right.
to go, I no longer want that to be true for anyone else in the world.
Mhm.
I don't want
I,
anyone else to ever
I'm
go through what I went
loving what I'm hearing from you. I'm seeing a different Geninne today. I mean, you were always lovely. You were always, bold and when you spoke and were confident. But I love what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing today. There's something in you that wasn't in the Geninne that I knew 4, 5, 6 years ago. And you said so many things, and I didn't want to interrupt you because it was flowing so
through.
beautifully. And I love the person you've become. You're not the tag team. You're not a sideshow. You're like the main show. And I love seeing this transition that's taking place in your life, and what you're talking about. How we can't allow that ash to be the thing that holds us back, to sit on it. And I've talked about how we get so comfortable, even though we know it's bad and it's negative. But at least I know it.
Right.
And I don't know what's around the corner. I mean, that sucks. Yeah, I know. I think I'm fat. I think I'm ugly. I think I'm this. Yeah, but at least I've kind of dealt with that, and I've built a life around that negativity. At least I know who I am here. As or if I step out and do this new thing, oh, it could be, 10 times worse.
Well, we also live in a day and age where you step out of your lane and somebody is ready to shoot you down,
Yeah.
right? Well, who are you to step into that lane, to be that thing, to do that thing? What gives you the right, the authority, the expertise to do that thing versus going like this me has
Mhm.
always existed.
Mm.
I just tried to conform my best to what I thought was supposed to how I was supposed to behave, how I was supposed to act. But for
Bam.
me, like the gospel has always been something that is incredibly practical. It's about how I am in the world. It's not about a
Mm.
set of behaviors or rules or any of those kinds of things. I want to be known as a person who the first law for my actions is love.
Yeah.
That the first law of my interactions with people is empathy. That the first law of how I perceive another human being is rooted in their best. Now, mind you, we live in a world that really makes it hard to be that kind of person. I have found myself way
Yeah.
too many times believing the best in someone and getting my hand slapped. But I can't stop being that kind of a person just because the world is hard. I can't stop being that person because somebody's going to take advantage of it. I
Mhm.
have to be, I've got to learn to be shrewder, maybe a little less,
Maybe.
maybe not offer that part of myself to everyone, but I
Yeah.
can't stop loving and believing that people want to be good and people have weird ways of getting to that good that is supposed to be a part of who they are.
Yeah.
But when we have a world that is really like we're ready to cancel anyone who has made a mistake, we're ready to cancel anyone who made a poor decision, but we also come to a place where many people are willing to say I'm sorry. I was
Mm.
wrong. We politicize our apologies. We use the right
Mm.
language. We paint it. We narrate it. We craft narratives around what this looks like instead of just humbly saying, you know what, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I should never have done that. I did not see the consequences of that decision, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Please give me a chance to make it right.
Mm.
That language doesn't exist. Like, even as I think about we're coming to an election, how
Mm.
grateful I would be for any one of our leaders to just honestly say, I didn't do this right. I'm learning on the fly. Many of
Mm.
us have never dealt with the things that we're dealing with right now.
Yep. Yep.
We want to be better. How do we be better together? Like that person would be like, you're human.
You're
Thank you.
authentic. You're
You're
real.
authentic.
Yeah.
You're real. Thank you for admitting that you didn't do right because you didn't have all the info. Like that weight of having everything right all the time and being perfect all the time is unreal.
It's unrealistic. Yeah.
Unrealistic for anyone.
It's not
Right?
sustainable.
Not sustainable at all. So why do we think more people are willing to stay in their ash? Because I know how to be this person in my ash, but if I step out, I don't. I'm gonna be accused of da 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 da, and it's way
Yep.
safer here. But we really do need people. We need people who are going, I can only offer to the best of my ability what I have to offer, and I'm going to humbly admit when I didn't get it right, when I'm trying my best, and if I'm ever in a place where I've done
Mm.
harm, that I can admit that and move forward. But we have to work really hard to create spaces. Like even as I think about the organization that I'm building, a core value
Mm.
is a value of candor. How do we create spaces where someone can honestly say, I didn't think that was racist. I didn't think
Right.
it was going to be received that way.
Mm.
But the minute that someone says something that's off color or is received wrong, it's like darts and venom. And how do we do this? Whether it's a
Yeah.
black person who gets super angry over something or a white person who faux
Hmm.
pas in terms of their statement. How do we create space for people to make mistakes so that we can grow and not make those mistakes anymore? As long as we're policing so hard all of this
Mm.
language, everyone's gonna be like, I'm just gonna say nothing
Yep. We've seen
because
that.
right. Because I'm not going to be accused of dot dot dot
Yeah.
dot dot, right? I'm not going to be accused of being an angry black woman. I'm not going to be accused of being a white supremacist. I'm not going to be accused of being um, whatever other label is viewed as
Hmm.
negative. If we cannot create space for honest, authentic, growing spaces where people can
Mm.
learn how to change our behavior, we're never going to move forward. Everyone's going to be too scared, too fearful, too angry, too ashamed, too guilty, too whatever it is that holds us back in our ash from doing what is good, right, true, praiseworthy, right? We
Geninne, this is so not just so good, but so necessary, especially in the culture that we're living in today. I want to say two things before we sign off. First of all, I just want to say how incredibly um, proud I am of of the woman that you're becoming, and that you are, for stepping out and doing something incredibly
Oh, Joe,
uncomfortable.
you're gonna make me cry.
That's okay. Well, you're like one of my kids. I love you. And when a dad's proud of his kid, he tells them, and I'm so proud of who you've become, and for doing what you're doing. And secondly, you keep talking about this organization. Just in a couple of minutes, tell us, well, the name of the organization, the website. How can people find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so the organization I'm running is called Bridge Diversity Consulting Services. You can find it at bridgediversity.ca, fairly simple. And
Hmm.
all of the organization is built on how do we create courses, workshops, consulting to help people have or create spaces for these conversations. So the tagline is an open invitation to complicated conversations.
Mm.
Because the reality is the nuance of this conversation around inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility is really, really human. It's not just policies, it's not just systems, it's about how we interact with one another as human beings. For the church, it's how we do this as people made in the image of God. For
Hmm.
those who are not necessarily faith based, it's how do we see the human dignity in another person and ascribe value to that dignity, whether they are in a wheelchair, whether they are South Asian, whether they are any ethnic group that
Hmm.
could be potentially marginalized. How do we help them know that they are valued and that they have dignity? And so that's where I'm at. So it's primarily
Okay.
courses, consulting, coaching, conversations, that kind of thing, and how we're doing that.
Okay.
And the whole point of it is actually rooted in a larger organization called the Third Way, which is finding ways of making representation and education accessible regardless of ethnic background. So a lot of kids, um, when they're Black, Indigenous, children of color, they're encouraged to just go through one particular stream of education. And I want to make it possible for
Mm.
kids to be able to choose any stream of education they want
Sure.
so that we get more people of color in STEM. We get more people of color in justice, more people of color in gender in education. How do we help expand the
Hmm.
visibility of people who are technically told, no, well, as a Black person, this is the kind of schooling you should go through?
Right. Yeah.
How do you change that? How do you help Indigenous kids stay rooted in their culture while also offering them opportunities to expand what is available
Hmm.
to them right now? And so that's my heart. The Bridge Diversity Consulting is designed to help finance all of the nonprofit work we want to do with
Mm.
the Third Way to help kids get educated in a way that is typically not available to them. So
Yeah.
that's kind of
Okay.
where I'm at and living.
Wow.
Still working through the business aspect of things, but my heart is as soon as we can get teaching and evaluating all of these systems, we're going to be able to make a difference in the lives of kids.
Amazing. Geninne, you like totally got off your ash. You are in a new lane, and you're actually creating a new lane. And I love that. I think this is so important. And I'm hoping that we can have another conversation down the road about this, especially as you get up and running, and hearing about some of the challenges and the victories, that you go through. And all those years ago when we met, you know, neither of us knew that we would end up, doing what we're doing today.
Right.
But I'm so proud that you had the courage to say, I gotta follow this thing in my heart. I gotta do it. I know it's uncomfortable. I may fail spectacularly and everybody's going to see it, but I gotta try. I gotta do this. And I'm just praying that God is going to bless this thing. He's going to bring you the right partners to be able to get this thing off the ground. And this is so important. I mean, now more than ever, Geninne.
Thank you so much, Joe. It is an honor to know you, you and your family, to have just rubbed shoulders over and over again with regards to the things that you're doing in Liberia. And I still remember we had the pleasure of traveling to Israel together and just
Yeah.
being able to sit and have that sense of community around the things that we we knew God was doing in us and through us during that season. And so I'm so
Yeah.
glad that our friendship has extended beyond that, and really excited to see how this book and impacts the way
Mhm.
you always do.
Well, Geninne, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and your heart with us. And we're going to follow up with you, okay?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Such a good pleasure to be with you guys.
Man, that was one of the most enjoyable conversations I've had in a long time. Just to see the growth in her life, and even though she didn't see it at times, to see the confidence that is in her, that's just emanating from her soul, from her spirit. I'm just so proud and excited for her that she got off her ash and she's doing what she knew she was called to do. She took that risk. And I didn't get a chance to ask her on the program today, but I bet if you asked her, do you regret leaving? Do you regret taking this risk and launching out and doing something uncomfortable? She would say, no way, not for a second. And so I'm hoping that anything I said in the opening of the show, anything you heard in my conversation with Geninne today, that it would give you the strength and the confidence to be able to do that thing, whatever it is that's in your heart that you want to try, and that you're not going to listen to that voice anymore that says, no, you can't do it, you're too this, you're too that, or you're not enough of this, whatever that is. I mean, tell those voices to shh. Remember chapter 8, kick your ash to the curb, say no. I'm not giving you permission to spew that nonsense on me. I know who I am, I know what I am, and I know what I want to do, and I'm going to do it. So my friends, whatever it is that's in your heart to do it to the best of your ability. And I pray nothing but success and blessing as you do it. So again, thank you so much for joining me today, and be encouraged. Get out there and do it. Thanks so much for joining us on today's podcast. We hope you found it informative and encouraging. For more information about Get Off Your Ash or to order the book, you can visit www.getoffyourash.today or just search it out on Amazon.